Hey, on Friday, down in Brunswick, Georgia, and if you've never been to Brunswick, Georgia, there's a causeway, a road that goes out to St. Simon's Island and some of the barrier islands in South Georgia. It's right above Jacksonville, Florida, in fact, sort of. And Brunswick, Georgia is pretty much what it has been for generations. It's a small southeastern Georgia town. At one time, the main industry there was shrimping and fishing and so on and so forth. And over the years, it's developed a bit. From all appearances, it's a nice town if you don't mind 6 months of voracious mosquitoes and just stultifying humidity. But Brunswick, Georgia is part of the Old South. At one time, enslaved people were forced to work there on plantations that were rice plantations, cotton plantations a little bit further inland. And as you know, it's where Ahmaud Arbery was murdered because he was black and running through a predominantly white neighborhood, if not exclusively white neighborhood. Well, on Friday, the judge sentenced Ahmaud Arbery's killers. They were found guilty. Two of them, the father and son, these two cretinous-looking fucks. This is what I mean about sitting across the table from somebody. How could I have done that? How could you have done that? Sat across the table from these two prior to their killing Ahmaud Arbery. But the father and son, morons, were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Hooray. And the dumb shit who went along for the ride, what was his name? Oh, yeah, Roddy Bryan Jr., William Roddy Bryan Jr., he was sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole. The problem is, for old Roddy, he's 52 years old and he has to serve 30 years. Then he'll be eligible. Roddy will not make 30 years in prison. You know that as well as I do. Now, what is interesting to me, a couple of things. First of all, that the three were found guilty. Guilty as charged. And the jury was all white, except one black person. And the defense of these three white killers had tried to stack the jury in favor of the defendants. And it just didn't work, did it? They tried all kinds of shit, these racist attorneys, and they were and are and always shall be racist attorneys. Can you imagine sitting across the table from them? But the other aspect of this is the fact that before he sentenced these three men convicted of killing Mr. Arbery to life in prison, the judge, Timothy Walmsley, held a minute of silence on Friday. He ordered the courtroom to shut the fuck up. Nobody to say anything. Absolute silence. What he was trying to do was to contextualize the time that the 25-year-old Ahmaud Arbery spent being chased by the defendants. The chase went on for about 6 minutes. The judge said this, quote, "That 1 minute represents a fraction of the time that Ahmaud Arbery was running in Satilla Shores." That was the name of the subdivision. The pursuit of Ahmaud Arbery lasted for 5 or 6 minutes. The judge said once he resumed speaking. And then he sentenced these three white racist pigs, Gregory and Travis McMichael, the father and son, and old Roddy Bryan, who chased this young black man in their neighborhood outside Brunswick, Georgia, and then killed him. Now, justice was served, right? What kind of justice? No, seriously. Remember, the videotape of this killing did not surface for weeks after the killing. The police knew about it in Brunswick. They knew. They had the video evidence. They had it in front of them. One of these assholes, I think the father, Gregory McMichael, was a former deputy or something. He had been involved in law enforcement. And one thing about Brunswick, it is not a big city. I'm not saying everybody knows everybody, but when I used to travel to Brunswick 30, 40 years ago, it was a small enough place that most people did know, at least those among them who were notorious or had reputations of being a bootlegger or somebody involved in petty crime, criminal activity, or, what have you. Small town southern life. So justice was served eventually. And in this case, justice delayed was not justice denied. These three bastards will never walk free again for the rest of their natural lives. They won't, and that's the way it should be. These punk-ass, filthy Caucasian killers chasing a 25-year-old man down and murdering him in cold blood. Unbelievable. Now, they told police that they believed that the young Mr. Arbery had committed a crime in their neighborhood, so they decided to take it on themselves. There was a law in the books when this happened here in Georgia that said civilians could make a civil arrest of somebody they suspected of committing a crime. That law has since been removed from the books specifically because of this case. But the father and son armed up and started chasing this young black man. And old Roddy Bryant joined in the pursuit, recording everything from his pickup. And Roddy's video shows the son, Travis McMichael, getting out of his truck and confronting Arbery. And then the shotgun that McMichael took out of the truck with him is pointed at Arbery, and he's shot dead. The judge said this, quote, "I do want to put some time period in context. Put that time period in context. And the only way I could think to do so, it may be a little theatrical, but I think it's appropriate. I want us all to get a concept of time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit silently for 1 minute." End quote. Now, Arbery's mother bowed her head during the silence, according to a pool reporter who was present in the courtroom. And the silence was broken only by the sound of journalists typing on their computer keyboards. Walmsley, the judge, said, quote, "When I thought about this, I thought from a lot of different angles, and I kept coming back to the terror that must have been in the mind of the young man running through that subdivision." End quote. Walmsley, the judge, drew attention for other comments he made earlier in the trial, of course, the most notably at the conclusion of the jury selection process. If you remember at that time, the judge said there appeared to be what he called intentional discrimination when the panel that was chosen primarily by the defense consisted of 12 people with just one black member. So while he ultimately ruled the case could go forward, even though he had those concerns, the judge said, since the defense could provide valid reasons beyond race for why the juries were dismissed, the defense could not do that. The judge said this court has found that there appears to be intentional discrimination. Well, the intentional discrimination disappeared in the sentencing, didn't it? So I wanted to mention that in the first place. I have to tell you, when this thing finally, when these three white men were finally charged in this killing, I was terrified that this white jury would find them, I don't know what, guilty of involuntary manslaughter or some such shit that might carry a prison sentence of 5 years or even a lesser charge. I was also afraid when I became aware of how the jury was being selected, there was a chance that they might be found not guilty. Now remember, not guilty doesn't mean innocent. It means not guilty, that the state didn't prove its case. Remember, we're innocent until proven guilty, and the state has to prove that we're guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. So given the makeup of South Georgia, the jury pool, the jury that was selected, all the white people involved, the fact that the tape showing this act of wanton murder being committed was held with nobody knowing about it for weeks. I think it was weeks, maybe it was months, until finally, I think it was Ahmaud Arbery's mother who was given a copy of the tape by law enforcement. I'm not sure how that went down, but she released it on her Facebook page. Was that it? And then the pressure started to build along the lines of, what the fuck is going on here? This was an absolute cold-blooded murder, and these white men are just whistling down the sidewalk, going about their business like nothing happened. But during the jury selection and during the trial, even though it became just so crystal clear that these three bastards were guilty as charged, I still harbored that fear of what's going to happen if these men are found not guilty. And I didn't so much think about the burning and the rioting that may have occurred, justifiable burning and rioting. I mean, where do you draw the line? I mean, come on. Where is the line drawn when a crowd that sees that justice is being kicked to the curb and the crowd reacts? I mean, where do you draw the line? But my fear was about, what if once again, white people are found not guilty of murdering a black man when the evidence is crystal clear? Well, maybe things have changed a bit, but does it take the death of black people to show the change? Does it take the murder of young black men and the ultimate conviction of the white killers to show white America and black America, and isn't it a shame I have to identify them that way, that the tide has turned a bit, that it's no longer possible for lynching by gunshot to be gotten away with? Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. As you know, we've switched formats and are now broadcast exclusively on the Progressive Voices Network. So that means you get fewer program interruptions, no corporate commercials, and lots of profanity. But our format change also means some of our radio listeners no longer hear the program. It's been a while since I mentioned our podcasts, so you may have forgotten that there is a way to listen to this program anytime you need a good dose of screaming. Visit MikeMalloy.com and subscribe to our podcasts. As a podcast subscriber, you can download the program to your mobile device and take me with you wherever you go. And if you have a friend who needs a dose of truth-seeking, you can give a gift subscription as well. That's MikeMalloy.com, and never miss a minute of the uncensored fun and frivolity.